Well, hello, hello. This is Darren, and this is my co-host Wyatt. We're back from our I guess it's been a month or so long hiatus. We've had some life events on uh, both sides that have kind of precluded us from being able to podcast and do the prep work and all the stuff, editing, all the stuff necessary to get this out there. So we're finally back at the start of a new year. And boy, do we have some big news. So, as I'm sure our listeners are already aware, uh, this past weekend, starting Friday and then going into the early hours of the morning and Saturday, Trump ordered an operation to capture Venezuelan President Maduro. And I'll kind of lay out what happened. So, a Chinese delegation actually met with Maduro, that is, earlier in the day, Friday, and was still in Venezuela when all the events of this weekend had been happening. Venezuela had been exporting oil to China despite U.S. sanctions, and they would do this via some trickery or other. Sometimes they would brand the oil to be from a different country, and this would somehow get it kind of past uh, regulators. But the mission itself involved 150 aircraft and from the U.S., and those aircraft dismantled the Venezuelan air defenses so that helicopters could deliver troops into Caracas, which is Venezuela's capital. The mission took about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And finally, and it only took that long before Mr. Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, were captured and then brought onto a boat. Some resistance was encountered, and it's looking like around 80 people were killed. 0 Americans died. However, about 6 or so soldiers were injured. Of the 80 people that were killed, most were military personnel and security forces. However, I think there were a handful of civilians and maybe even some Cuban security forces. We might get into why that would be later. Uh, Congress was not notified, so this was pretty much a unilateral action by Trump. Maduro and his wife were flown into the U.S. on Saturday, and they are set to be arraigned in Manhattan on Monday, January the 5th, on drugs and weapon charges. Now, I'm going to provide some background for all this and I guess some context, some history on Venezuela. But before I switch to that, is there anything I missed? Why? Any just facts about this weekend or the past, or even today that you might want to add?
I don't want to stop you while you're rolling too good, but just, long story short, the United States government captured or kidnapped, if you prefer, a foreign military and leader. We kidnapped a dictator of a country, which is just bananas. I'm sure we'll get into how bananas it is later, but yeah, go ahead and give us like a history of Venezuela and all of that.
Well, to jump off what you said real quick, when I heard that we did this, when I woke up Saturday morning, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't recall a time we've ever done this in the past. I think this might be the first time this has ever been done. And sure enough, this is the first time in history that we have like captured a world leader and brought him to the United States for a trial. So yeah, really making history here. It's something.
I take it you're not Saddam Hussein. I guess are we counting that because he went to like the International Criminal Court? Is that why we're not counting?
Yeah, I wouldn't count that. I mean, this
Because that
just
was more of
seems
an
like.
international affair. This is definitely like 100% a U.S.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're charging just for the audience. I'm sure we'll get into it later. They're charging him through the second district of New York, right?
yeah. He's facing charges in the U.S. like federal
Right.
charges. So so it's just kind of crazy because some of the charges are like like owning machine guns or something, and drug charges, which are dubious. But it's like, well, he's a world leader, so you would imagine he would have access to machine guns. But I digress. We can get into that later. Uh, I'll give some like history and some facts about Venezuela, so that our audience might understand why we want to invade them or control them. So Venezuela's oil reserves are actually the largest in the world, and Venezuela itself is actually a pretty big country. You might not be able to tell by looking off a map because they're fairly close to the equator, but comparatively, they're larger than Ukraine, actually. So this is actually, in terms of landmass, a fairly big country, and its 2013 population was 30 million about. And I use 2013 because that's when Maduro came to power. This is like before the great refugee crisis. So when like a third of their population left. So, 30 million, fairly big country. In terms of land mass, it's pretty big. But despite it having really big oil reserves, uh, Venezuela's crude oil is kind of like thick and viscous. Therefore, it's harder to refine. Whereas crude oil from like Saudi Arabia, for example, is really light and doesn't require much in the way of refinement before it can be turned into commodities like gas. So there's a lot of the Venezuelan crude oil, but only so many refineries across the world are actually equipped to refine it. And American oil companies basically built Venezuela's oil industry in the 1920s when oil was discovered there. The Venezuelans did not, at that time, have the knowledge or the technology to exploit their own natural resources. But soon after we came in there and helped them out a little, their economy was doing really well. And in the earlier part of the 20th century, they were actually one of the wealthier nations on the planet. But in 1975, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry and created PDVSA, or Petróleos de Venezuela, which just means Venezuela Petroleum. Uh, Venezuela at this time did not have the refining capacity that the U.S. did to refine what they extracted. So the U.S. actually had to refine the vast majority of it. Venezuela could only refine a small fraction of what they extracted per day because it's so heavy and the process is so difficult. So Hugo Chavez who ruled from 1999 until his death in 2013. This is kind of like where all the trouble begins, is when Hugo Chavez, the socialist dictator, comes around. So he purged PDVSA of thousands, like literally like 18,000, I think was the number I saw. It was something, it was very high. You wouldn't think so many people uh, worked there, but yeah, he purged like 18,000 expert workers and engineers and replaced them with cronies. And this in turn decreased the PDVSA's productive capacity and efficiency, and it soon started having really deleterious effects on the Venezuelan economy. Upon Hugo Chavez's death in 2013, Nicolás Maduro assumed power, and he was handpicked by Hugo Chavez to be his successor. And Maduro basically took the bad situation Chavez had left him in and exacerbated the issue. And by 2017, I saw a number 76 out of 84 PDVSA plants were out of operation. So at that point, the state's oil production fell to 20% of its total capacity. And this was actually before the sanctions levied against Venezuela in Trump's first term, which before 2019 were limited only to individual Venezuelan officials and like criminals in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2019, after Trump placed the sanctions on PDVSA stemming from issues related to the disputed election results of the 2018 Venezuelan presidential election. And in Venezuela, a presidential term is 6 years, just so the audience knows. Uh, it kind of started this thing called the Venezuelan presidential crisis. And this kind of was in the period of 2019 to 2023. You see all these figures come about. It was actually Henry Falcone that ran against Maduro and lost, quote unquote, by a pretty wide margin. But in light of this loss, the main opposition party, the National Assembly, uh, claimed that President of the National Assembly Juan Guaido, I'm sure our listeners have heard that name, claimed interim presidency, and this gained international support, but it was all pretty much like European countries and America. It was all split in like geopolitical lines. So, like, Russia and Iran and
Mm-hmm.
China, they all supported Maduro, and like, all the Western countries, we supported Guaido. And and then the sanctions happened during this period. So all this turmoil, this led to like 7 to 8 million Venezuelans out of that 30 million leaving the country. And this is what was known as the Venezuelan refugee crisis. Nicolas Maduro ran and won election once more in 2024 against Edmundo Gonzalez. And this election is also very much contested, even by people who nominally would seem to be on Maduro's side, like Lula in Brazil. He's a leftist, but even he was like, yeah, that was totally a stolen election.
Right.
So it's widely regarded. Both of those elections are widely regarded as stolen. And then just kind of bringing us more to the current times in 2025, really just a month before all this, Trump started building up a massive military presence off the coast of Venezuela. He was bombing drug boats. claiming Maduro
Whoa,
is
whoa,
the
whoa, whoa,
leader,
whoa, whoa. He was bombing. He was bombing fucking what now?
quote unquote drug boats. Sorry,
Okay, yeah.
I should have. Yeah, it's very dubious that these are actually drug boats. But he also claimed Maduro is the leader of a cartel called the Cartel of the Suns or something, which I've heard is basically made up. And this was all to just kind of keep Maduro anxious and on his toes. And it was hoped, I think, by Trump that rather somebody in his government would kill him, or or maybe Maduro would step down due to the pressure, but he didn't. He kept staying in there for, I guess this military buildup has been going on for 2 or 3 months. I can't remember the exact date when it started, but it's been going on for a little while. And all this basically culminated into the events of this weekend. So this brings us into the present with what just happened a couple days ago. Before we discuss and look to the future, is there anything you want to add to that? Any background or any thoughts? What?
Yeah, we talked about it before earlier on the podcast where, it seemed like Maduro was willing to like almost like capitulate and play ball. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I feel like most of this is not the brainchild of Trump, right? Like, would you agree, Darren? Is it fair to say that this is more of like Rubio's personal foreign policy, right?
Oh, this is definitely a Rubio thing, I would say.
Yeah, and that's why it's not stopping here. Like I'm sure we'll talk about it like towards the end, but like Cuba is very the targets are on Cuba next. Lindsey Graham and Trump were joking on Air Force One about how Cuba's about to fall and how they're about to do the same thing there. But leaving that aside, I just think that it's very odd that we decided to do this, especially from like the peace president. Um, that's just I don't know. Help me rationalize this, Darren. Like what's it, why should Americans see this and like not be like, well, what the hell? You know?
Well, this is going to be one of those things. I'm probably going to say something a little bit unpopular, but for me, I I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously in support of what Trump is doing. For one, the operation itself was totally badass, and doing what we did to Maduro, no other military could have done it. I think it's a total flex on like all the other rival powers. Like, hey, we can do whatever we want. This is how awesome we are. So I like it for that. I think it was a great show of force in that respect. We killed like 80 security personnel and zero deaths on our side. That's pretty insane. Uh, I mainly like it though because I think the Western Hemisphere is more of like our sphere of our like traditional sphere of influence, I guess, or our natural sphere of influence. Much has been said about the multipolar world emerging. If you believe in this theory of multipolarity where America's power as an empire is waning a little, and then maybe, by 2050, maybe we won't be necessarily the premier world power, but there'll be maybe two or three like world powers that are like on peer level. Uh, then you, then you might be in favor of taking actions that relate to like the new Monroe Doctrine, which is basically like we can do whatever we want to the Western Hemisphere, and as for the Eastern Hemisphere, we leave that to like China or something, or Russia. China and Russia can kind of do battle for it, something like that. So,
And are you a
eh,
believer in this Donroe Doctrine? That is what they're calling it, the Donald Trump Monroe Doctrine.
yes, I believe the Western Hemisphere is ours to do what we please with. I believe our power projection easily, reaches from the tip of Canada down to Argentina. I believe it's in our national security interest to make sure that all the countries in the Western Hemisphere are aligned with us and don't collaborate with China or Russia like Maduro was trying to do in the past. Uh, just like the Cold War, we didn't like that Cuba was being, playing footsie with the Soviets. So, it's in our interest to make sure they're not at our doorstep, just like it's in Russia's interest to, make sure Ukraine doesn't join NATO or, something like that. So,
Right, right,
I,
right.
I think,
But wait a minute now. Wait a minute now. So just because Ukraine even implies or, says that they want to join NATO, that doesn't give Russia the right to invade Ukraine, just like, Venezuela aligning with China and with Russia doesn't get, or the BRICS nations in general, that doesn't give us the right to go Billy Badass and kidnap their fucking leader, right? I mean, that's insane.
well, well, here's the thing. Optically, it's not good because all the weak countries are like, "Oh no, this could happen to me." But I mean, I believe that might makes right, basically.
Well,
And
might certainly makes, right? But I don't know that might necessarily makes right. But you seem to think so. Why?
basically, just because it's in our interest to do it, we can do it, and
See, I
I
keep
think it's
hearing
in the
that.
well, I
Go
think
ahead.
it's in the interest of a lot of our allies too. I mean, if we can now, this is a big if. I will preface what I'm about to say with that. But if we, have a cooperative government in Venezuela that's willing to do what we command, so, break off ties with Russia, China, don't buy their defense stuff, you know, if they let us bring our oil companies in to rebuild their infrastructure, which is pretty dilapidated, and get their productive capacity up, not only will this skyrocket the standard of living in Venezuela, this will make Americans richer. It'll make
Oh,
gas cheaper,
stop. Oh,
and
oh, good
and
Lord.
and when gas is super cheap, if crude oil is selling at like it's like 57 a barrel right now. What happens when it's selling at like 50 a barrel or less? That's going to be really hard on Russia, who is fighting in Ukraine, because they're such a big oil economy. The revenues are going to go down so much. It's going to be harder for them to finance their war against Ukraine. And I'm not pro Russia by any means. I'm very pro Ukraine. So if I was a European, if I was France or Germany or all these other people that want the United States to do more, I'd be clapping like a seal right now.
Well, for the most part, that they are, right? Most of the world leaders have been clapping at the capture of Maduro without realizing that, they listen, here's just the facts. If Trump can do this to Venezuela, I mean, how many other world leaders could he do this to? Realistically, I doubt that he would, most of our Western allies, but it just seems like a horrible idea. Now, I disagree with everything basically you're saying. I do not see this being like a miracle cure for the gas problem, for the cost of living here in America, for pretty much anything. I really don't.
Well,
And
well, I,
I don't think you do either. I think you think that this is just a badass show of force and it keeps China and Russia in line. I think that's why you like this, and you're just willing to make believe everything else.
Well, I like those aspects of it, but I'm under no illusions. I mean, it's a lot of ifs. Like a lot of things have to go right in order for it to get gas prices down at a sustained level. I think gas futures have, the gas price has gone down, because of what people are estimating for in the future. But, we have yet to realize that. I mean, it's going to take years to rebuild their infrastructure, to build their productive capacity up. I mean, so much human capital has been lost because of what happened under Chavez. So, by no means is this like a,
And
like a
here's okay, so even if we skip the kidnapping of a foreign leader, right? Let's just put that aside, all right? Despite how crazy that is. You're
mm,
talking about a scenario where we would have a totally compliant vassal state, right? And that's not even guaranteed. You know what I mean? Like that's your best case scenario. Your best case scenario is maybe this will benefit Americans at a marginal level, right? But let's talk about the risk a little bit. Can you tell me, like from your calculation, like what is the worst case scenario here?
okay. The worst case scenario is that we try to invade with like, I don't know, 100,000 is the number I've heard. I don't know if that's like arbitrary, but apparently that's like the amount it would take to reasonably like invade and occupy Venezuela. 100,000 at least, boots on the ground. I would imagine it's probably more. So worst case, we do that, and we try to transition to like Maria Corina Machado, the recent Nobel Prize winner. Trump made a remark like, "Oh, she's not that respected. She's not. She's nice, but she doesn't command the respect needed." And I actually think he's right about that because the military, they're all like loyalists, Maduro loyalists. So I think actually what Trump is doing right now is actually the wise move. So let me break down my reasoning. He did this big military buildup because he hoped to scare Maduro into just like fleeing the country or stepping down. That didn't happen. So Trump was about to look like a fool, like he does quite often. So to save face, he goes in, he captures Maduro. It's awesome. Nobody can deny it's totally badass. But he leaves uh, Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president to Maduro, in charge. So all of the loyalists in the military are going to remain compliant with her. They're going to do what she says. She's going to be like, okay, guys, we have to play ball because the U.S. can basically do whatever they want. And if I don't comply, they're just going to come in and kill me and kill a bunch of y'all. So we're going to play ball with the U.S. It's still me. It's still me, guys. Don't kill me, but we're going to play ball and we're just going to give them the rights to our oil, all our natural resources, which was already on the table with Maduro. But now Trump has saved face by capturing Maduro, and he's going to probably do the deal with Delcy Rodriguez, who will hopefully be very compliant. And this will be like a total like slave vassal that will do whatever we want, because if she doesn't, we're just going to come in and capture her, or in Trump's words, do something worse. So, kill her.
Right.
Uh, and then basically we have access to all their resources, but we don't have an uprising because the government remained intact. And, and at least this time, Trump didn't look like a dumbass. So I think it's a win-win if this is the direction they're going. Because my fear was that we were going to try to like occupy and then transition to Machado. But this would have definitely become like an all-out war, and it's like jungle terrain. So it would have been like Vietnam. It would have been totally bad. But I think the direction we're going is actually pretty wise.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I would describe this situation. Very wise. Oh yeah. Um, Listen, dude, I just can't believe what I'm hearing right now. Like we don't I'm not even sure that these fucks have a plan. Are you sure that they have a plan? Like are we that convinced that Trump and Rubio are just like, "Oh, yep, we're all squared away. We know exactly how the next 6 months is going to look." Cuz I don't fucking buy that, you know? The only way that that scenario even makes sense is if it was premeditated with the Maduro's vice president, which I have seen some speculation about, but we can't obviously. There's no way to know. Um, but
Oh yeah, I saw that speculation too. I I won't go into it because I kind of doubt it as well myself.
right, right, right. But
But
anyway, not the point. The point is that like again, we're at a state in American politics where you can just argue for basically war for resource exploitation. Like the whole reason we're doing this, right, is because they have a shit ton of oil and we want the oil, right?
mhm.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. And the American people are going to have to sit with that fact, and they're going to have to because I don't think many people actually buy the narco terrorist thing anymore. Trump's it's not even in the indictment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, which is just hilarious. But you're going to tell me that we have a guy or we have a country who aligned with our adversaries, and because they aligned with our adversary, there's tons of people aligned with China and Russia. We didn't attack Brazil or South Africa, right? Or you know, any of those countries. Like, I don't know. There's just so
Well,
many
here's the
ways to
thing.
hit this.
Here's the thing. Like we've got to look at like what's
And
reasonable.
what
What
precedent does this set? Like let's get to that in a minute. But go ahead.
we also have to look at like what can we reasonably like accomplish. Obviously, like taking down Brazil, that would be incredibly fraught. It would likely not lead to any good outcomes. Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world. It's the biggest in South America. Their military isn't like anywhere near our level, but they have a big population. Their president is actually fairly well liked. It's kind of like a whole different scenario than with Maduro because Maduro is pretty universally reviled unless you're like a tanky or you're like a Chinese or a Russian person. Maduro has done imperialism in his Guyana, his neighboring country. So he has no if he's mad at us for doing what we did to him, then he shouldn't have been so aggressive with them. I say so. I to me this is just comeuppance. He nobody really likes this guy. He doesn't have any real
Yeah, but
international
listen,
allies.
let's
So
let's 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 just logically let's just play this out, right? I mean, like you're basically telling a country like here's why I keep saying like we didn't do this to Brazil. We didn't do this to Kim Jong Un. We didn't do this to Netanyahu, right? We didn't do this to known war criminals and people who are not exactly beloved by their people, right? Like we didn't do that to them, you know? Um we did it to Maduro, and we didn't do it to Kim Jong Un because he has nukes, right? So like this is gonna cause country like if I'm a small country and I'm like on the fence between China and the United States, like why would you not consider nuclearization right now? Like, Iran had better fucking hope to God that they can figure out this fuel cycle because like why would you not get a nuke now? We have a crazy person who will literally just try to kidnap you in the middle of the night, you know? At least with like Venezuela, like if they had nuclear weapons, do you think we'd be fucking with them?
um,
No, no. Oh,
it
go,
would
go. Give me a
decrease the
break.
likelihood, but I think
Dramatically, dramatically.
it would certainly decrease the likelihood dramatically. But I don't think it would make it uh, an impossibility. I think most people, even if they had nukes, would be too pussy to use them. So,
Oh, I think you're out of
uh,
your mind. I think you're out of your mind. The idea that we would, the idea that we would even think about such a thing, um, with with a nuclear power is insane. I don't. You don't believe that. I'm just gonna ignore that.
No, I do. I think,
There you go.
okay,
Um,
if Pakistan and India went to war, they're both nuclear. Do you think either of those sides would actually use the nuke?
yes,
I don't think so.
yes.
I think they'd chicken out. I
Would you be willing to risk it?
uh
Would you be willing to risk it? Let's say you lived in New Delhi. Would you would you risk nuclear war?
well, let's just say I'm glad I live in America if that
Exactly.
ever
Yeah.
broke
Uh-huh.
out,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I still think it would be
But you
unlikely.
see my point. You know what I mean?
I see your point. I see your point. It would be a scary time, but I think
And listen, I'm just
uh
saying, if you're gonna go with like a might is right Monroe Doctrine, where we control every ounce of our hemisphere, um, like what leg are we gonna stand on if China starts, fucking with Taiwan or the Philippines or South Korea? Not that they would, South Korea or the Philippines. I'm just giving out examples. Like if they wanted to, right? Like, what leg would we have to stand on morally? There's no justification for this according to the Constitution. Like, I don't even think that this was legal, but not that that matters. I mean, we're past that, I think, in American politics. You know what I mean?
well,
Like,
here's the thing. I don't buy this argument because if China felt that they could if they felt that they could take Taiwan and it wouldn't hurt them too bad, it wouldn't hurt their international standing too. If the cost benefit analysis was that it would be worth it for them to take Taiwan, uh, if it were not for fear of U.S. reprisal, they would have already done it. I mean, they conquered Hong Kong, you know, fairly recently. So it it's not because of international law that they're just like not going for it. I mean, we can't like morality police them into not doing what they want to do. It's only because they're like kind of afraid of us and what might happen that they have not invaded Taiwan yet. But they've been doing military exercises a lot recently. Over they've surrounded
right, but
Taiwan.
you're kind of ignoring my point here. My point is that like we just spent the past 4 years telling Russia that they violated the sovereignty of Ukraine, and then that is exactly what the fuck we just did. And we're gonna have no leg to stand on when China decides to violate Taiwan's sovereignty, right? Um, like there's just no moral claim that we're gonna have when that eventually happens or in the future. Like what moral claim are we gonna have if Israel wants to, I don't know, bomb the Saudi prince or go to war with Iran, right? Like what leg are we for fun? Like just because, like what leg are we gonna have to stand on? So, I mean, how does this even look 6 months from now? Like, do you think that we're gonna just occupy? Because Trump says we're gonna occupy this, and whenever they're asked, like, who's gonna run the country, Trump's like, me, Marco. Like, you know what I mean? Um, just is that good? Do we like that?
See that I don't like, and we've been receiving mixed messages
True.
from Trump and Rubio, basically since it happened. In the press conference, Trump kind of implied that we would be more hands-on, but I think recent developments kind of make me think we're going to have a more of a hands-off, coerce from afar type of approach and that I'm all for. I think if it's done right, we can benefit a lot and at minimal risk if it's done like that.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, I'll give the Trump administration a little bit of credit. It seems like Trump's idea here is like, if we're gonna do this, let's do this in the most like low risk averse, like way possible, right? Like he's not like if this was Bush, Bush would have already had 100,000 troops there. You know what I mean? Like we'd have had Marines
Yeah.
knocking down doors in Caracas in fucking 9 hours, like Um, but I don't think that this is really much better, to be honest with you, because like I think the result is basically the same. Like this is not gonna work. I don't see how. I mean, this is almost designed not to work because we're not even going for real regime change. We're just trying to replace the head with a more like one that's willing to capitulate. But even then, like I'll ask you as a conservative, how sure are you that this isn't going to lead to another destabilized country in South America and then a refugee crisis again?
See, that is the risk we run because I mean,
And let's say,
it
you
was
know,
like
it's a Democrat in 4 years and the borders are more open, right? So like, are you willing to risk like another like 4 million? Let's just say it's 4 million. You know, like, are you willing to risk that over what? Over like 30 cents cheaper gas? You're out of your mind.
it's a lot of risk versus a lot of reward. I think we are getting some good things in terms of strengthening our position relative to China and Russia. I do think on a strategic level, it was a good move. But yeah, I mean, you are right. It does come with all these risks. I don't deny that at all, and that does worry me. But that's also part of the reason I'm not wanting to push Maria Machado on the Venezuelan people. I'd rather them like stick like I see. I would have rather that they stuck with Maduro and then done the deal where we just get all the resources. To me, that would have been the optimum scenario, or close to the optimum
That would have been
scenario.
diplomacy, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But I think this is like the next best thing because this saves face for Trump. And if it's Delcy Rodriguez and we're just keeping a loaded gun pointed at her 24/7, then I think this is almost just as good, if not better, because we got to show off on the world stage. Even if maybe some countries took offense, and maybe the optics were bad in some ways. I think in a lot of ways this is kind of a big PR victory for us as well because, and I think Trump cynically needed it because he's been so underwater. People have been very displeased with him. This was just so badass that I think it really scored him some brownie points with the base.
Yeah, I mean, between the Epstein and honestly just like 2025 not being as strong of a presidency as he had hoped. I mean, yeah, he kind of like this is a win for him and his cronies. I don't doubt that, you know, but and it got people to quit talking about the Epstein files because like, you know, like there's lawyers in the bowels of CNN trying to figure out how this is even going to be justified legally. And those poor idiots, they don't even realize that it doesn't even fucking matter. Like
Yeah,
those poor souls who are getting paid to figure that out. Um, I don't know. It just the whole thing just seems so crazy to me. I'm still not over the fact that we just fucking kidnapped a foreign leader. You know, just he didn't even do anything to the U.S. You know what I mean? It, like that's
yeah.
you know what I
I mean,
mean? Like his crime is actually like not dealing with the U.S. You know? Um,
yeah. I mean, I totally agree that the pretext was like the most contrived fake thing imaginable. It's like laughably stupid, but
well, that's why they can't go to the ICC. Like with Saddam Hussein, you could actually go to the ICC and be like, "Hey, he's an actual fucking dictator." But like with Maduro, like we're not even trying to do that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
the ICC is like, we don't have an arrest warrant for this guy. You know what I mean?
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah, I mean his crimes certainly I don't think
dude,
are
dude like, like
on the
this
level
is.
of
I'll just ask you personally. Like, do you think that like what he's done to his people is any worse than what Netanyahu's done to Palestinians? And I hate to be that lefty that always brings shit back to Palestine, but like I gotta ask, like, because that's insane to me.
Oh, of course not. I mean, he's not been a good leader, but he's nowhere near like honestly, I have no real animosity towards Maduro. Like to me it's all business. I mean, on some level, I almost feel a little bad for him because he's going to probably spend the rest of his life in a U.S. prison, albeit probably a fairly, nice one. But still, I mean, he.
You know, this is really funny. I can't remember who I saw argue this, but they said that his life in prison in the United States was going to be a better quality than being the dictator of Venezuela, and I just thought that that was funny. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, uh, he. Well, he probably did live lavishly in Venezuela, but what I will say is he probably won't have as many people trying to kill him in U.S. prison. So there's that. It would be nicer in that respect, I guess.
I mean, I guess, yeah, but Jesus. Well, okay, okay. Now just we'll wrap this puppy up this way, just like you know. And I hate to do predictions, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna fast forward to a year from now. Do you think that this issue, Venezuela, is a winner or a loser for Trump? Just broadly
I'm,
speaking.
I'm
Like,
gonna say it'll be a broad winner. There's a lot of things though. I think the good stuff is going to be like not short term, but maybe medium term. So the rebuilding of Venezuela's oil infrastructure, our companies going in, all that takes time. So it's going to be a while before we really reap the benefits of it. But I do think it will be a net positive. I'm fingers crossed. I'm optimistic. How
okay, well,
about
how
you?
about this? How about this? Just let me slight rephrase the question because the midterms are this year. When like a when a voter thinks of the issue of Venezuela, do you think that that's going to be a political winner or a loser for Trump a year from now,
Ooh.
or like
It's
in
hard.
November? Sorry.
It's hard to say because broadly it was unpopular. I will say that. You know, I think around 30 something percent of America was for it, and then the rest was unsure or they were against it. But I will say his approval rating has jumped up since this happened. So the base likes it. Like the base likes it. So I think it'll probably help him because from what I've seen, a lot of people who were getting kind of sick of him are more on the train or back on the train. So I think this is a net positive for him, but the Democrats might use it as ammunition against him in 2026. So
Oh yeah, they'd be
it's
stupid
hard to
not
say.
to. Yeah, I would turn
So
anything he does into ammunition against him.
So I guess you think that it's probably going to be a net negative for him to have done this.
Yeah, and a lot of this, like I said, it's speculation, but like I just see a lot of opportunity for this to crash and burn, you know, and whether or not people will care, I don't know, but if they do, then I think that this will be like just an obvious negative. I think that this is going to be. I think in 4 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, what an like, what a stupid decision to try and like turn things around in your second term. Like, what an idiotic decision, you know? Um,
Yeah, it very well might. I don't deny that it is unpopular. I will say that. I'm definitely in the minority in that I support it. But you know what else was unpopular? When Biden withdrew from Afghanistan in
sure,
a
yeah.
very haphazard way, but I think it was the right move.
No, and
As
I'm, maybe you're playing to your audience here, but yeah, 100% I agree. Like, it was not a political winner for him. It was actually the start of his downfall in his coalition, and it was 100% the right decision. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. Definitely. So I mean, from my perspective, I know you're not in favor of what he did, but to me, this is kind of like Biden's Afghanistan moment. I think it was the right move. I think it was a good move, but it could totally bite him in the
Well, I
butt.
don't. I don't think this will be as negative to Trump as Afghanistan. I mean, Afghanistan literally ruined his presidency. Like you're talking like Biden was at 60% approvals before um before Afghanistan, right? Like he was floating like at 57 to 59 consistently. And then
Hmm.
Afghanistan happens and then he became the most unpopular president in the history of the country, which is insane. Like so um like
Well, I tell you
this won't
what,
be that bad.
yeah, I mean, with all the crap Trump pulls, this is, I wouldn't say this is anywhere near as bad as some of the things he's done. Uh, honestly, to me, honestly, the tariffs were way dumber than this, uh,
Sure.
oh crap, what was I gonna say? Something about, oh yeah, I actually feel a little bad for Democrats in this respect because Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, in my opinion, uh, I guess it had less of a negative, like less of a negative potentiality than what Trump did with Venezuela. And yet, with Biden, like you said, it tanked his presidency. Even though it was the right move, I think Republicans can just message way better than Democrats. Like they really know how to like mobilize people against their opposition, whereas Democrats just don't because like a lot of
Nationally, at
Democrats.
least. Yeah.
Oh yeah, nationally, because I mean a lot of Democrats are even in favor what what Trump did, even though it's pretty unpopular. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just think they are poor messengers.
Well, I look forward to doing a follow up on this podcast and seeing what we think. Because like who knows? Like maybe like a win for you is I just look back and I'm like, it really wasn't that bad.